Hi there, and thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast. We feature those who are in the process of overcoming or have overcome any type of life encounter, life obstacle that at the time seemed to be almost insurmountable. With this podcast, we have three objectives in mind. Our first objective is we want you to know with a confident resolve you are not alone. We want to work with you. We want you to know there are others who are working with you, who want to help you through whatever you are encountering, and together we will get through whatever you're experiencing.
Our second objective is there are multiple options for any life encounter you are facing. We want to help you develop a resolve that there are various options and solutions to any life dilemma.
Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If you're encountering something that was possibly a decision you made sometime in the past, and if you had the opportunity for a life redo, you would make a different decision. We want to help you with those critical thinking skills that can help you make an informed decision and not encounter what you're going through at the moment. We are the Cooper Culture, a veteran-owned business. We work with business personnel and families to develop and sustain connected relationship cultures within their families and organizations. That type organization is one where people feel wanted, appreciated, and genuinely a part of that organization. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty, who is helping me facilitate this podcast. Today we feature Jacques Delorme for a second episode, where he continues telling his story of a very traumatic accident that occurred as of this recording a little over 3 years ago, but he can still, through various images, conversations, recall various aspects of the incident that was very traumatic for him. He describes to our listeners the experiences he has had with that trauma and how he has overcome the trauma, a part of that being through neuro-linguistic programming. It's a very interesting story, one of which is he remained silent and kept within him the trauma he was experiencing because he just did not know how to deal with it. He is still at a point where he can be activated by various thoughts of having recollection of the trauma. But it's a great story, and we can learn from his experience how to work with others who are experiencing various traumas. Marty, what are some takeaways we can learn from Jacques?
Just listening to this podcast and what he went through, the strength that he received from counseling, it's an amazing story, and how he worked through the guilt of the accident and came to the point where there was nothing else he could do.
As leaders, I want to encourage you to reach out to those who might be silent about. You would have to discern what may be troubling this person. They may be holding within trauma experience from the past, but through trust, they are willing to discuss and overcome these traumas. Let's listen and learn together. Jacques, it is good to have you back with us. Our first episode with you, you discussed your PTSD and the trauma you went through, and I thought it'd be good for our listeners to just gain a little more from your experience of how you overcame trauma. And I want to tell our listeners that I am certainly not clinically qualified, anything to do with PTSD, but I'm very interested in learning how various people get through trauma, get over the past, and how we might help someone else. Jacques, let me ask you for starters, and welcome back. It's good to have you with us.
But well, it's great to be back. Thanks.
Do we need to be certified in trauma specialty in some way to help a person, or is it more simply just be willing to work with a person and listen?
That's a question I've gotten before. And one of the things that is kind of a misconception and being very careful, right? When I speak with somebody about my experience, one of the things that I will always indicate is that I'm not a certified professional. I do not give medical advice. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a psychologist. But the part that I do from my perspective, because it's a lived experience, which is a little different for me, the people that I was dealing with in trying to get the help, I was seeing a counselor, I was seeing a life coach, I was seeing a psychologist. Not one person I spoke to had ever experienced a trauma. So it's very different. The perception of what I'm going through a lot comes from book study. Somebody's a psychologist has learned all the material from going through classes, going through a PhD, going through a master's degree. But where's the lived experience? That's the perception that I come from, where I went through something really traumatic. I'm trying to get through the other side. So what can I give to someone else who's trying to get through things in their life? From my perspective, it comes from the learned experience, from having physically tried to get through this myself. I've tried things that didn't work. I've tried things that worked very well. And I know for a fact that someone else going through a trauma will have a very different experience than mine. They could see exactly the same thing, but have a very different reaction. And how they get through it can be very different. So for me, I tried multiple things, and part of my book goes into the accident, obviously, but then goes through the pieces of here are the things I tried. These might be something that can help you. I'm not trying to treat you. I'm not trying to help you get through the other side as a medical person from a medical standpoint. The items that I give and the suggestions I have are only self-care ideas beyond what you have for counseling that you could try and might help, and talk to your medical professional to see, okay, is this a good idea for me? And go from that route. So for me, it's not looking at treating someone. It's trying to help somebody look at, here are the possibilities of what I can do to try to help myself to get better.
I appreciate what you just said. Learned experience and a learned life experience. And that's what our listeners need to hear. Just briefly describe what the trauma was you experienced, and then we'll get into more depth of how you're dealing with. And ultimately, I'm going to ask you, are you over the trauma, or do you just, are there maybe trigger points, activation points where you just have to still learn to cope with?
Well, the previous interview you and I did, I went through a lot of detail with the accident that I was involved in. So as a Reader's Digest version, a short version, I was driving at night on a high-speed highway and hit a 24-year-old man on a pedal bike right in the middle of my car. He hit my windshield, bounced up and over. I got to a stop. I go back to try to help him, but unfortunately, before I could do that, he was run over by a mid-sized SUV, got his body was launched through the air in a different spot, and then immediately after that, his body was hit again by a semi. So I had three different small traumas all grouped together to create one big event for me. He obviously is no longer with us. Do I know it was my collision that killed him? No, because I wasn't able to actually give him any medical aid before the second vehicle contact. So whether or not my collision did it, I don't know. That helps a little bit with trying to figure out how I deal with this. But going through that experience of watching a human body go through what it went through is traumatizing, and it's really difficult to deal with. The initial reaction is, what the heck? Why was he there? You start to justify, you start to try to reason, why did this happen? And that was a lot of the initial thinking within my brain. Like the PTSD kicks in really quickly, and you just can't make reason of it. And your brain goes on fire. You got what I call monkey brain, where your brain is constantly in chatter. It's in chatter mode. It's talking to you, talking to you, talking to you. Part of that is your reptilian brain that's trying to protect you. You went through something really horrible, saw something a person should not have to see, and now your brain is going, okay, you got to watch out. This could happen again. So there's your reptilian brain trying to protect you. So that's what's causing what you'd said, a trigger. So every time something happens that reminds me a little bit of something connected to the accident, I immediately have my brain go right back to when the accident happened and put me in the same state. So my state after the accident was very high heart rate, high blood pressure, and not in the middle of my chest with the stress, the anxiety of what just happened and what I just saw. So a trigger will happen that takes me back. There's the PTSD
Now,
response,
let
right?
me advance that a little bit,
Yeah,
Jacques. I'm interpreting what you're saying, and please correct me if I'm misinterpreting. You know how to deal with the trauma. You don't expunge it from your memory. It's still
yeah.
there. But every once in a while, something can trigger a thought, and you know how to deal with or manage that. Am I characterizing you correctly?
Correct. Yes. It takes quite some time to learn how to do that. We don't come innately knowing how to deal with severe stress. Like PTSD is stress at the nth degree. And trying to deal with the triggers that happen when you have a traumatic experience, learning how to handle your emotions and learning how to deal with that flashback. Going back to the same state of what I was in after the accident puts me in a physical response as well as an emotional response. So the first thing I had to do was learn how to control the response to stop the physical from happening. Because your brain controls your body, but your body also controls your brain. So if you don't control the central nervous system response, your brain can get impacted quite heavily every time a trigger happens. So for me, I went through something called neuro-linguistic programming, which is a way of using the thought processes within your mind, communication and visualization within your mind to deal with the event that happened. For me, it was trying to create that disconnect from the physical response and the event itself from when it happened. I was able to, after a number of sessions, to be able to take myself from a 10,000-foot view of seeing the accident and dealing with that physical response. The more I did that, the more I got closer and closer to the point where I could stand on the side of the highway, see the accident happen, and I was able to control my physical response. That was stage one for me, trying to get to the point where I can have a trigger, but the physical response is much, much less. It's decreased. That was the first part. If I can't control my physical response, I can't control my brain. So that was the first part. Once I got to that point, now I start working on the emotional piece to get myself into a state where I can think about the accident, I can talk about the accident, and I don't have anxiety. I don't have that depression kick in. I don't have that fear that kicks in of what will people think when they find out. That was really hard at the beginning. That the fear piece was really hard. And that's why I never told anybody. I told very few people initially.
Talk to us a little bit about neurolinguistic programming. The neural, I understand, at least I think of that as the brain, but
Yes.
it took you, what, several attempts to learn that, yep, this is what I want to focus on, and you found that that worked. Am I
Yes.
thinking of that
Yeah.
correctly, how you thought of that?
Yeah. 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 I went through 10 sessions with a certified NLP practitioner. She was actually my life coach as well. And I had her go through that with me. We went through 10 sessions, and it was me working on some of that on my own as well, on top of that. But that's a process where, like I had mentioned, I started a 10,000-foot view trying to see the accident, and I immediately have a physical response. So what I do is I physically will be standing in a room. I'll take a step sideways to remove myself from that situation, control my physical response, control my mental response. Once I calm down, come back in, try to continue a bit longer, step back out when it gets bad. And that process of in and out took 2, 3 sessions of just 10,000-foot view to even try to even see it. As it got better, I was able to get closer. I could get within a quarter mile. I could get within a few feet and slowly get closer so that I could increase the intensity of the memory and still be able to control how I feel. Right. So that's a linguistic piece. It's like talking to yourself or visualization of with yourself. And then the neural, like you said, is your brain. So it's a way of being able to relive that experience and be able to control the response that I have.
Is there a hypnotic aspect of NLP? And I'm asking that from a totally ignorant standpoint, but are you training the brain? And I'm just the word hypnosis comes about, and it may and if it has nothing to do with NLP, then certainly correct me.
Yeah. Hypnosis, not so much from a clinical definition of what it is. You are in a relaxed state. You need to be in a relaxed state to do it. So it's a meditative sort of state, but not hypnosis to that degree. Now, hypnosis, I was recommended that at one point where you can use hypnosis to take a memory that you have that you're trying to deal with and you bury it. I find that from my own perspective, dangerous because you are not going to bury that thing forever. It is going to come back and it's going to come back in full force and is not going to be nice. And that's where, for myself, I would rather meet it head on and have it as a part of who I am because my reality is I cannot remove the memory. The memory's there. It always will be there. How I deal with the memory is far more important than trying to ignore it. If I ignore it, I'm just asking for trouble. And from my perspective, I just went, no, I'm not willing to do that. I want to meet this head on. I wanted to see, okay, how do I manage what happened?
All right, I'm going to ask you, it's a very elementary question about NLP, the process, but is it a matter of each time you discuss it, you can get a little closer to the details and you become more conditioned to learning how to deal with it? Is that a very elementary explanation?
Yeah, that would be accurate. Yes. It's learning how to cope and how to manage the emotional and the physical response of something that has happened. Now, it could take a long time depending on the person. Like for me, it took 10 sessions, but we're talking once a week, once every week and a half. The latter part almost 2 weeks. So it took several weeks of doing it. It took me literally 10 months to get to a point where I could actually start to write my book. 10 months after the accident, I started writing the book that I wrote to try to get my story out and to be able to cover significant detail while doing that. So that was part of the latter stages of me going through my healing process where I was able to get the story more concretely on paper, which was extremely difficult because the detail I was going through. So I had to really relive everything that was there. But it took me 10 months to get to that point. And even from someone who's been through a PTSD, which is severe, like somebody from wartime who's actually physically shot someone or seen the carnage of war, it will take significantly longer because of the nature of their trauma itself. I consider myself a little bit luckier that I was able to do it within a year, which it could take longer. It could take somebody less. I don't know. It depends on the individual and it depends on the circumstance of what they're involved in.
Now, let me ask you, are you self-assessed as being over this or learning how to deal with it, or is there an actual assessment? I'm asking it also from the context when you mentioned military. I am 22 years military. I served in the air, and I know that's different necessarily from being on the ground. And yes, if you're in hand-to-hand combat and so forth, that can produce different types of trauma. But are you largely in control of yourself, self-assessment that, yep, you felt all right at the 10-month period, you didn't need 14 months? Do you understand how I'm asking the question?
I think so. At the 10-month point is when I started to write my book, and it really was the starting point of me talking about what happened with other people. Up to that point, I told my closest friends, my family, my closest family, and my boss at work, but that was it. No one else knew what was going on. And I kept that very hidden for me. Like for my fear and my recovery, I was not prepared to tell anyone. At that point of writing my book, now it's very public because I'm releasing my book. The following February, I released my book. So now it's very public. I started to tell people. I got interesting reactions from certain people. Some had a lot of difficulty even hearing it. My story is very graphic. especially with the detailed version. It's a graphic thing that people put themselves into that first person mentality. Like you're watching a movie, you put yourself as the main character. One of the problems you run into with something that's more of a graphic story is something called vicarious trauma. It's a trauma that's a lot of EMTs, police officers, firefighters, doctors run into, where they see the result of a trauma and they put themselves into the situation of this is what happened and too much into first character, and they become traumatized themselves. So somebody like a firefighter coming on an accident scene where somebody's got the top of their head gone and it's very graphic to see and very difficult to see, that's traumatizing even though they were not physically there when the trauma happened. So that's the vicarious trauma. Like I do presentations with fire departments, with police officers, and we talk about the stuff that's happened for me, and I give them the firsthand perspective on, for them being at the accident, they run into people like me. I had to deal with an EMT. I had to deal with a police officer at my accident scene, and I had to relay, here's what happened. And that's dangerous for them. Like they are in an environment where this happens over and over again at various different traumas, where that's difficult for them to handle, right? So that's where another piece of part of what I do is to talk to people about, okay, how do you deal with somebody like me? So for them to talk to me, have me say my story, they need to keep themselves separate from the first person movie theater sort of mentality, right? They have to be very careful of that. But then how do they treat me? What language do they use to deal with me when I just lived it? What's my mental state going to be? Like, how do you then have a communication with me that's not going to be triggering, right?
We are recording this in April of 2025. How long ago was the accident?
3.5 years ago. It was October the 6th of 2021 when the accident happened.
All right. Now, I'm curious, does my questioning invoke any anxiety, anything like that? Or, and I certainly don't want to, but yet I feel as if my questions can help a listener overcome what they're going through, or at least get the type treatment they need.
Yeah. The conversation itself now, 3.5 years later, the response I have is not to the level that it was after the accident, obviously. Is there something always there? Yes. And that's inevitable. And it's something I've learned to be able to manage. I feel a little bit of tension more than anything. My heart rate goes up a little bit simply because of the nature of what we're talking about, but it's not debilitating. It's not something I can't manage. It's not something I can't get around as part of the discussion. For me, I look at what is the end goal of why I do this. The whole reason why I became a life coach and I started doing presentations as a public speaker was to educate people that I went through something really horrific. I had a lot of difficulty trying to find help, to get somebody to help me because I didn't know where to go. I'd never experienced the trauma, so I didn't know what avenues I had able to go to figure out where to go. Like, what counselor do I talk to? The first counselor I went to was a disaster. They weren't trained in trauma. They're trained in regular, everyday, normal stuff that's stressful. Trauma is different. Trauma is much more severe, and it's a lot harder on the counselor to know how to deal with that person. I ended up with the wrong person. So there was that struggle of trying to find, who do I talk to? Struggle of, well, I have a counselor for an hour. Okay, what about the other 6 days and 23 hours that I have coming up before I see them again? What do I do? So it's all those struggles are what I then put myself into going, I need to teach somebody else this. I went through the struggle of trying to learn all this stuff. I want to make it easier for someone else to go, okay, what do I do for me? What are the self-care things, the meditation, the journaling, the breath work, all those pieces that I found really helpful? Learn those. Start to dig into those pieces to understand these are the things I can do for me that doesn't involve somebody else. I don't need to explain my story 100 times to get help because it's me working on me. The counseling will help, and I highly suggest don't try and do these on your own. Get the help you need. Suck it up. Like the alpha male mentality piece, especially for men, men go inwards. When something severe happens, we go inside because society tells us as an alpha male, you need to be stoic. You need to never cry. You need to never talk about your emotions because, hey, suck it up, buttercup. You're a man. But that doesn't work. The suicide rate in North America is 4-to-1 ratio for a reason. 80% of suicides are men because we don't talk.
Well,
Right?
yeah, I want to pursue that just a little bit, Jacques, and I really appreciate your candor in this. It is, I want to talk about the leader in the workplace who might have someone on their staff. They may have a Jacques on their staff.
Mm-hmm.
Jacques, at this point, at that point in their trauma, will not speak about what you're going through and so forth. How would we, as a leader who generally care about you, Jacques, what might we discern, detect that you're going through something, you just haven't expressed it yet? I do and want to gain your confidence and trust that you can discuss it with me if you want, and I'll refer you to better help. And that's a very overarching question, but there may be people on the staff who are experiencing what you did experience, but they wouldn't talk about it at all. It would be incumbent on us to create the environment where I use the expression, it's a psychologically safe environment. Feel free to talk to me. I'm not going to force you to do it, but I want you to feel free. But Jacques, what are some of the symptoms we can maybe discern that, hey, I just sense there's something going on in your life, Jacques?
Taken from a personal experience on what I physically did right after my accident, I was detached. One of the first things you notice, especially when it's PTSD, it's an instant piece. It's not something that builds over time. Like you have your marriage falling apart, eventually going to divorce. That takes weeks, that takes months. PTSD, when you're dealing with a trauma, was one moment in time that caused it. So you're going to see something suddenly change in that person. They make less eye contact. They're more detached. They're not part of group discussions as much. You have the social event. They don't tend to go there. If they do, they're very dejected. They stay more to themselves, right? It's that pulling away piece because they're dealing with something internally within their own mind. And part of what they think and part of what happens going through it is they don't believe anyone else really cares. And they don't think somebody else understands what they're going through, which is why and part of it's the fear of what is their reaction going to be. That was mine, right? I had huge fear for me of, I don't want to be labeled as a killer. So when I tell somebody I killed somebody in a car accident, that's a large fear for me of being judged. Yep. No one wants to be judged for something that happened to them or something they experienced. So it's easier to keep quiet than it is to have that fear become a reality.
Oh,
wow. Not being judged for who they are, right?
Wow, that's very instrumental what you just said, that you don't want to be judged. And who cares? And now you've just activated a part of my early life. And if I am not certain who cares, I'll just remain silent. And you did the same thing. And so I think what I would ask you, Jacques, as we as leaders in the workplace, if we do genuinely care about those on our staff, we will. I want to stay away from the word look for. Let's just say we will be aware of some of the things you just discussed about a person. They may not like eye contact. They may be less interactive and so forth. But if we become aware of and want to talk without labeling, judging, and so forth, is that an approach that might work as just a general approach to someone who's experiencing trauma?
Yeah. There are two pieces to that I would recommend. One is be very careful of the language that is used. They're not crazy, right? Some of the language you hear people say when suddenly we know somebody's going through something, it's very important not to come off as being judgmental or that you're trying to fix. Do not fix the person. You're not a medical professional. You're not a counselor, right? You may be somebody's leader at work. My boss at work did it the right way. Her response to me has always been basically the same since she found out. She's always asked, "What do you need from me?" That puts the onus on me to go, okay, this is what I need right now, right? I had the agreement with her that if I'm having a bad day, I'm in tears at my desk, I'm overwhelmed, I need to go home. All I need to do is walk into her office and go, "I need to go." That's it. 3 words. There was no discussion. There was no nothing. She would go, "Okay, done," and I leave.
Right
Right?
there is very important. So you had a very understanding supervisor who I'm going to guess believe that over time you'll get over what you're going through. But she believed in you enough that yep, I'm willing to work with you, and if we need to cut today short, that's fine. But in the end, everything's going to work out all right. Was that kind of the relationship you
Yeah.
had?
It's a very supportive environment where she's there as a support system. She's not there to fix my problem.
Yep.
It's not her job. It's not your boss's job to fix you, right? It has nothing to do with them. We have support systems in place at work. We have what's called EFAP. It's the Employee Family Assistance Program, where we have the counselors in place. We have the medical help in place. And I am able to use sick leave for that, mental health is no different than having the flu
Mm-hmm.
from the perspective of how employers look at it. Now, some employers are not quite there yet. It's still something fairly new. Ours is kind of changing over time. It's getting much better. We're getting more money towards psychologists, counselors, but we're able to use and access sick time to be able to go and get the help we need when things get hard. And she understands that part, and she's there as a support system and there to be understanding of, yes, you're going through something. I understand what it is. You've explained it, what was going on. I'm not here trying to fix you. I'm here to support you in, okay, you need help from, okay, how can I help you get the help you need? That's the question, more so than, okay, what can we do to fix this?
Yep.
Well, that's the wrong terminology. You're not fixing anything, right? Don't try to fix me, right? I want somebody there as an ear to listen. That's the biggest thing somebody going through trauma really needs is somebody to listen,
Yep.
not to fix.
Oh,
Right?
that's great. And I'm going to believe we would be willing to listen as long as we care. And that's an attribute or trait we have to have, that we care enough about you that, yep, we're willing to work with you in any capacity to help you. And wow, Jacques, that's right there is very important, because there are people who just will not discuss what it is they're going through. They just want the right person and a caring attitude to help them overcome what they're going through.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, bang
Wow.
on.
Jacques, I want to thank you on behalf of our listeners for being willing to express very candidly your trauma, how to get through, and yes, everyone is different, but I do think that the one attribute that can be overarching is if we care and we demonstrate that care, we'll be able to find someone to help you overcome, and we
Yeah.
can match you with the right person, but we care enough to make the attempt to do that.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. Jacques, thank you so much for sharing. And I am hoping that our listeners will gain, well, I know they will gain from this, and anyone on our respective staffs who may be going through different things, be willing to care, listen, and be willing to reach out. Thank you so much for your testimony.
It's my
Doc,
pleasure. I'm always there to help. Yeah.
I just want to say something. Our daughter feels like our granddaughter goes through PTSD because she was severely bullied in school.
Mhm.
And so, talking to you, this kind of helps us understand her maybe a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, part of the bullying piece, because I deal with younger women as well. I deal with 16, 17-year-old girls. I coach a volleyball team. I have some who have that emotional distress from things happening in their lives, and I help them quite a bit, just using sport to manage part of the emotional piece too. And the bullying part for your granddaughter is going to come down to her self-worth. Like she's told, when you say the same thing over and over and over again, your brain starts to believe that it's fact. So when you're bullied to the extent where your brain starts to believe that you really don't have any worth, that you aren't really somebody that's should be here anymore, and it drives those kids to suicide. My daughter has a friend who she went to school with committed suicide this past weekend. 16 years old.
God.
16-year-old girl. Like, what drove her to the point of despair so badly that taking her own life was the only option she saw left? So yeah, I get that, and I see it with kids now, especially with social media, and having been bombarded so much with social media with the bullying piece. That becomes a large piece of kids' lives now. The technology has gotten to the point where you can bully somebody and do it from hiding, and you feel like you've got all this power. That's where the bullies get the power from. They feel like, oh, I've got control of this person. I can do this. I can really ride them. And they drive some of these kids to suicide. And it's wrong, right? And part of it is trying to control the social media aspect, but also getting these kids the help they need and being able to control how badly these bullies can get away with things, right? We have laws within Canada now, especially within Saskatchewan. It's called the bullying law, where you can be charged as a teenager for bullying somebody, even using social media. Proof is there. Once a social media post is up, it's there for good. You can find it. So we've had kids charged with bullying under the criminal code in Canada because of what they're doing, because we know it's dangerous, right?
Yep. And I will tell you, I use the expression, I would rather apologize than have to eulogize. And I mean by that, if I were to ask you, well, Jacques, it just seems like something may not be right, and you may respond to that by saying, nope, this is just a down moment, no, everything's fine, to which I would say, okay, apologize, but I care enough and want to ask. If I just dismiss it and a week later it results in suicide, that's where I'm talking about. I wish I would have intervened earlier. Yeah. That's really, Jacques, what I'm trying to encourage our listeners to do, to have the courage to intervene and just care enough to ask.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great message. Good for you.
Well, thank you, Jacques. Well, we appreciate your life, Jacques, and what you're continuing to do to help other people. We look forward to continuing our dialogue.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
We appreciate having the opportunity to share our and our guests' life's experiences with you.
The Cooper Culture advances organizations to achieve and sustain high retention rates, connected communication, and trust through personality insights and principled leadership. You can contact us at our website, thecooperculture.com, and you can contact us directly at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, at thecooperculture.com. We work with you to help assess aspects of your culture to advance the environment and people to their best performance. We do that through our staff of certified personal performance coaches, leadership trainers, keynote speakers, and disc personality behavior experts. You can book a speaking engagement directly through our website by contacting us at ron@thecooperculture.com. We look forward to sharing our life experiences with you, some of which are profound, some of which are pretty funny. Some of those life experiences are ones we'll never do that again because we've been through stuff. We truly look forward to working with you, speaking with you, helping advance you in any way that we can.